She laughed as she threw his suitcase out the door and told him he was a burden she no longer needed. Broke, humiliated, and abandoned by the woman he loved, he walked into the night with nothing. Years later, when she sat in a boardroom begging for mercy, she never imagined the man at the head of the table would be the same husband she once kicked out for being poor. The rain had been falling since morning, thin at first, then heavier, as if the sky itself was tired of holding things in. Daniel stood quietly near the living room window, watching water slide down the glass in crooked lines. He had learned to stand quietly in his own house. It was easier that way. Less arguing, less humiliation. Behind him, the sound of high heels clicked sharply against the marble floor. Every step carried irritation. "Daniel," Sophia said, her voice tight with impatience. "We need to talk. Now." He turned slowly. She was standing with her arms crossed, perfectly dressed as always. Her silk blouse didn't have a single wrinkle. Her hair was immaculate. She looked like the woman she had always been, confident, rich, untouchable. "What's wrong?" he asked gently, though he already knew. She scoffed. "What's wrong? Look at you. Look at us. Or rather, look at what we've become." Daniel swallowed. "I'm trying. You know I am." The business didn't. "Don't," she snapped, cutting him off. "Don't give me excuses. I'm tired of hearing them." This wasn't new. For months, maybe years, every conversation had ended the same way. His failed startup. His unstable income. Her family's expectations. Her embarrassment when friends asked what her husband did. Sophia walked to the table and picked up a thin folder. She tossed it toward him. It slid across the polished surface and stopped at his feet. "What's this?" he asked. "Divorce papers," she said flatly. "And before you ask, yes, I've already signed." The word hit him harder than any slap ever could. "Divorce?" he repeated, his voice barely audible. "Sophia, we're married." We said many things," she interrupted. "I said I wanted a partner, not a responsibility. I married you thinking you had ambition, potential, but all you've given me is disappointment." Daniel felt heat rise to his eyes, but he forced himself to stay calm. "I supported you when you were starting out, when your father didn't believe in you. When—" She laughed, sharp and cruel. "Don't flatter yourself. My success has nothing to do with you. If anything, you've held me back." The words cut deep, precisely because part of him still loved her. "I just need time," he said. "I can fix this. I'll take any job. I'm done waiting," she said. "My parents are coming for dinner tonight, and I refuse to explain why my husband can't even afford a decent suit." There it was. The real reason. Shame. She walked past him toward the bedroom. "Pack your things. You can take whatever is yours." Daniel followed her, disbelief in every step. "You're kicking me out?" She turned, her eyes cold. "This is my house. My father paid for it. You don't belong here anymore." A long silence filled the room. Even the rain outside seemed to pause. "After everything," he whispered. Sophia sighed, annoyed, not sad. "You're too emotional, Daniel. That's another one of your problems. Men like you live in feelings. Men like my father live in reality." She dragged out a suitcase and dropped it on the bed. "Be gone before dinner." Daniel packed quietly. A few clothes, old notebooks, a worn wallet with almost no cash inside. Every item felt heavier than it should have, filled with memories that now meant nothing to her. When he reached the door, suitcase in hand, Sophia stood nearby, scrolling on her phone. "I hope you find something," she said without looking up. "But don't contact me again unless it's through lawyers." He paused. Sophia, if one day I succeed. She looked up and laughed openly now. You? Succeed? Daniel, be realistic. Some people are born to rise. Others are born to support them. Know your place. She opened the door and gestured outside. The hallway was empty, cold, silent. Daniel stepped out. The door closed behind him with a soft click, final and unforgiving. That night, he sat on a bus bench with his suitcase beside him, rain soaking through his coat. Cars passed by, splashing water onto the pavement. No one noticed him. No one cared. He had never felt so invisible. He checked his phone. No missed calls. No messages. Not even from the woman who had once promised to stand by him forever. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, staring at the ground. His chest felt tight, his throat burned, but no tears came. Just a deep, aching emptiness. This is rock bottom, he whispered to himself. For the first time, he had nothing left to lose. And somewhere deep inside that broken silence, something shifted. Not hope yet. Not confidence. Just a quiet, stubborn refusal to disappear. Daniel picked up his suitcase, stood up, and walked into the night, unaware that the man Sophia had mocked and thrown away was only at the beginning of a journey that would one day shake her entire world. Daniel spent the first few nights moving from place to place, sleeping wherever he could without being noticed. One night it was the corner of a cheap bus station, another night a narrow bench in a public park where the streetlights flickered like tired eyes. Each morning, he woke with stiff muscles and a heavier heart, but also with a strange clarity he had never felt before. There was no one left to impress. No one left to disappoint. Just survival. On the fourth day, hunger finally pushed him into action. He walked into a small cafe near the industrial area of the city, the kind of place most wealthy people never noticed. The smell of fried eggs and cheap coffee filled the air. He approached the counter, his clothes wrinkled, his eyes tired. "Are you hiring?" he asked quietly. The owner, an old man with rough hands and a permanently tired face, looked him up and down. "Can you wash dishes?" "Yes," Daniel replied immediately. "Anything. You start tonight. Pay is daily. Don't be late." That night, as warm water soaked his cracked hands and plates clattered endlessly, Daniel felt something unexpected. Relief. The work was exhausting but honest. No pretending. No humiliation masked as love. Just effort and reward, however small. Days turned into weeks. Daniel found a shared room in a rundown building, barely enough space for a mattress and his suitcase. The walls were thin. The air smelled of dust and old paint, but it was shelter. At night, after work, he would sit on the mattress with his old notebook, writing ideas by the dim light of a single bulb. He remembered how Sophia used to mock those notebooks. "Dreams don't pay bills," she would say. Now he wrote anyway. During the day, he worked multiple jobs. Mornings unloading trucks at a warehouse. Afternoons at the cafe. Nights learning. He borrowed books from the public library, finance, technology, leadership. Words he once skimmed now felt like lifelines. He watched free lectures online, replaying them again and again until the concepts made sense. There were nights he nearly gave up. One evening, after a 14-hour shift, his body trembling from exhaustion, he sat on the edge of his mattress and stared at the wall. His phone buzzed. A social media notification. Without thinking, he opened it. Sophia. She was smiling in a photo, standing beside her father at a luxury event. The caption read, "Grateful for the life I deserve." Daniel's chest tightened. For a moment, anger flared. Then shame. Then doubt. Maybe she was right, he murmured. Maybe this is all I'll ever be. He closed the app and threw the phone aside. His hands shook. Tears finally came, silent and heavy. He pressed his face into his palms, letting the pain wash through him instead of running from it. That night, he made a decision. He would stop proving himself to the world. He would start building himself for himself. Months passed. Daniel saved every possible dollar. No parties. No distractions. He enrolled in an online certification program, studying during lunch breaks and after midnight. His eyes burned from staring at screens. His back ached constantly, but he kept going. At the warehouse, he noticed inefficiencies others ignored. Delays. Wasted resources. Poor coordination. Instead of complaining, he started suggesting small improvements. At first, people laughed. "You're just a laborer," one supervisor said. "Stick to lifting boxes." But Daniel didn't argue. He documented everything. Numbers, patterns, solutions. One day, the warehouse manager called him into the office. "You came up with this?" the manager asked, holding Daniel's notes. "Yes," Daniel replied calmly. The man leaned back, studying him. "You saved us 15% in logistics costs last month." That was the first door. Daniel was promoted, then promoted again. His income stabilized. His confidence slowly returned, not the loud kind, but something deeper and steadier. Years slipped by quietly. Daniel changed, but not dramatically at first. His clothes became cleaner, better fitted. His posture straighter. His voice firmer. He stopped reacting emotionally and started thinking strategically. While others spent their money as soon as they earned it, Daniel invested carefully, patiently. He learned the power of silence. While Sophia's world revolved around appearances and validation, Daniel's world revolved around growth and discipline. He didn't post his progress. He didn't announce his wins. He worked. One evening, after nearly 4 years, Daniel stood in front of a mirror in his small but comfortable apartment. The man looking back had sharper eyes, a calm expression, and a quiet strength. He barely recognized himself. That same week, he received an unexpected email. It was from an investment firm. They had reviewed one of his analytical reports shared quietly through professional channels and wanted to meet. The meeting changed everything. Daniel spoke with clarity, confidence, and precision. No desperation. No insecurity. Just value. By the end of the conversation, the partners exchanged looks. "We'd like to bring you in," one of them said. "Senior strategy role." Daniel nodded slowly. "I'll consider it." For the first time in his life, he had leverage. As he walked out of the glass building, sunlight reflecting off the city around him, a thought crossed his mind. Not revenge, not anger, but irony. Sophia once said he should know his place. He finally did, and it was far higher than anyone had ever imagined. Daniel accepted the offer, but not the way most people would have. He negotiated quietly, asking for equity instead of a higher salary, choosing long-term ownership over short-term comfort. The partners were surprised, but they respected the confidence in his request. They agreed. That decision would later change the course of his life. The first year at the firm was relentless. Daniel was surrounded by people who spoke in numbers and moved in millions. Boardrooms replaced warehouses, tailored suits replaced work gloves, but his mindset stayed the same. He arrived early, left late, and listened more than he spoke. While others chased recognition, Daniel chased understanding. He learned how companies rose and how they collapsed, how egos destroyed empires, how silence, timing, and patience often mattered more than brilliance. He studied deals late into the night, his past hunger fueling his present discipline. Slowly, his name began to carry weight. Clients asked for him, specifically. Partners trusted his judgment. When markets shifted, Daniel didn't panic. He remembered nights without food, without shelter. Numbers on a screen could never scare him the way real hunger once had. 5 years passed. Daniel was no longer just an employee. He was a stakeholder. His investments multiplied quietly. He diversified, not chasing trends but fundamentals. While others showed off luxury cars, Daniel drove modestly. While others posted achievements online, Daniel stayed invisible. Power, he learned, was quiet. One evening, at an exclusive networking event, someone mentioned the name Harrington Group. Daniel's hand paused around his glass. Harrington Group. Sophia's father's company. A legacy business. Manufacturing, logistics, real estate. Once dominant. Now struggling under outdated leadership and reckless expansion. Daniel listened carefully as executives talked. "They're bleeding," one man said. "Too much pride to restructure." "The daughter pushed some terrible decisions," another added. "Image over intelligence." Daniel said nothing. He didn't need to. That night, he went home and opened his laptop. For hours, he studied Harrington Group's financials. Debt ratios. Asset values. Weak points. Opportunities. The more he read, the clearer the picture became. The company was vulnerable. Not broken. Just mismanaged. And Daniel knew exactly how to fix it. Over the next 2 years, he positioned himself carefully. He increased his capital, built alliances, and waited. When market pressure hit and Harrington Group stock dipped, Daniel moved. Not directly, not publicly, but through layers of strategic investment. Share by share. Stake by stake. No headlines. No drama. Sophia, meanwhile, lived loudly. Daniel saw her occasionally on magazine covers, always smiling, always flawless. She had taken a leadership role in her father's company, presenting herself as the modern face of the brand. Interviews praised her confidence, her vision. No one mentioned the mounting losses behind the scenes. She never mentioned Daniel, and Daniel never reached out. He didn't hate her anymore. That part of him had healed. What remained was clarity. On a rainy afternoon, ironically similar to the night he had been thrown out, Daniel received a call. "The board is calling an emergency meeting," his partner said. Harrington Group. Potential acquisition vote. Daniel looked out of the window as rain streaked down the glass, the memory sharp but no longer painful. "Put my name forward," he said calmly. The boardroom was tense. Papers scattered. Voices low and urgent. When Daniel entered, several heads turned. Some recognized him. Others didn't. Sophia sat near her father, whispering urgently. She looked confident, powerful, until her eyes lifted and met his. Her face froze. The room seemed to shrink. For a second, neither of them moved. Years of history passed silently between them. The poor husband she had laughed at. The man she had thrown out with a suitcase and nothing else. Daniel gave a small, polite nod. Not anger. Not pride. Control. Sophia's father cleared his throat. "Mr. Daniel, right?" he said. "You're representing the investment group?" "Yes," Daniel replied evenly. Sophia leaned toward her father, her voice tight. "Dad, that's him." The old man frowned. "Him? My ex-husband," she whispered. Murmurs rippled through the room. Daniel stood tall, his presence steady. He wasn't there to embarrass anyone. He was there to close a deal. The chairman spoke. "Mr. Wright's group currently holds the largest voting share. The proposal on the table is full acquisition and restructuring." Sophia's confidence cracked. "You can't be serious," she said, looking directly at Daniel now. "This is personal." Daniel met her gaze for the first time fully. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "This is business." Silence followed. In that moment, Sophia realized something terrifying. The man she had once dismissed had returned, not to beg, not to argue, but to decide her future. And the decision hadn't even been made yet. The room stayed silent for several seconds after Daniel's words. Not the awkward kind of silence, but the heavy kind, the kind that presses against the chest and makes every breath feel louder than it should. Papers stopped rustling. Phones were forgotten. Every person in that boardroom understood that something irreversible was happening. Sophia was the first to speak again. "You planned this," she said, her voice tight, controlled, but trembling underneath. "This is revenge." Daniel didn't respond immediately. He looked around the table instead, at the executives, the lawyers, the board members. People who had never seen him poor. People who only knew him as a strategist, an investor, a decision-maker. Then he spoke. "Revenge would be destroying this company out of spite," he said evenly. "That's not what I'm here to do." Her father leaned forward, studying Daniel with narrowed eyes. "Then why are you here?" Daniel met the older man's gaze. "Because your company is failing. And because I know how to save it." Sophia let out a short, bitter laugh. "You? Save us?" Daniel turned to her slowly. "Yes." The chairman cleared his throat. "Let's focus. Mr. Wright's proposal offers debt relief, operational restructuring, and long-term stability. Without it, Harrington Group will be insolvent within 18 months. Sophia shook her head. "You're all ignoring the obvious. He's doing this to humiliate me." Daniel finally allowed a hint of emotion into his voice, not anger, but something deeper. "Sophia, I didn't come here to humiliate you. You did that to me years ago. I came because this company employs thousands of people, and they deserve leadership that puts results above appearances." Her face flushed. The words hit too close to truth. Her father exhaled slowly. "What are your conditions?" he asked. Daniel opened the folder in front of him. "I will assume majority ownership. Current leadership will step down. New management will be installed based on performance, not family ties." Sophia stiffened. "You're removing me." "Yes," Daniel said calmly. She stood up abruptly, chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You can't do this. This company is my life." Daniel looked at her, not as a husband, not as a victim, but as a man who had finally learned his worth. "You once told me to know my place," he said quietly. "This is mine." Her eyes filled with disbelief. "After everything, after I—" "You chose," Daniel interrupted gently. "And so did I." The board voted. One by one, hands were raised. The decision was unanimous. Sophia's shoulders slumped, as if something inside her finally broke. Her father closed his eyes, the weight of his own mistakes settling heavily on him. Years of pride, poor judgment, and unchecked ego had led them here. The meeting ended quickly after that. As people filed out, Sophia remained seated, staring at the table. Daniel gathered his papers and stood, ready to leave. He didn't intend to say anything more. He had said enough. But as he passed her, she spoke in a broken whisper. "I didn't think you'd survive without me." Daniel stopped. He turned slowly. "Neither did I," he admitted. "But that's the thing about being stripped of everything. You finally discover what you're made of." She looked up at him now, tears streaking her flawless makeup. "I was afraid," she said. "My whole life, I was taught that money is safety, that love without power is weakness." Daniel nodded. "And I was taught that love means endurance, even when it hurts." They stared at each other for a long moment, not as enemies, not as lovers, just as two people standing on opposite sides of the consequences of their choices. "I never stopped believing in you," she whispered. I just stopped believing you were enough. Daniel's voice was soft, but firm. I was always enough. I just believed the wrong person when she told me otherwise. He walked away then, leaving her alone in the boardroom that no longer belonged to her. The following months were brutal, but not for Daniel. Under his leadership, Harrington Group transformed. Inefficiencies were eliminated. Toxic managers were replaced. Workers were valued. Profits stabilized, then grew. Quietly, methodically, the company began to thrive again. Daniel didn't seek praise. He didn't grant interviews. He didn't flaunt his success. The same man who once washed dishes to survive now signed contracts that moved industries. Sophia watched from a distance. She lost her position, her influence, and many of the friends who had once surrounded her. Invitations stopped coming. Calls went unanswered. For the first time in her life, she experienced something she had never learned how to handle: irrelevance. Late one evening, months after the acquisition, Daniel stood alone in his office overlooking the city. The lights below glittered like stars fallen to earth. He thought about the rain-soaked night he had walked away with his suitcase and nothing else. He smiled, not with pride, but with peace. He hadn't won by destroying anyone. He had won by becoming someone. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest edges of pain. A year passed after the acquisition, then another. Daniel's life settled into a rhythm that felt almost unreal compared to where he had started. His mornings were quiet. His nights were calm. Success surrounded him, but it no longer defined him. It simply existed, like air, necessary but not something he chased anymore. One afternoon, his assistant informed him that a woman was waiting in the lobby. She hadn't scheduled an appointment. She had insisted. Daniel already knew who it was.
"Send her in," he said.
Sophia walked into his office slowly, as if every step required courage she wasn't sure she still had. She looked different. Not broken, but stripped of the armor she once wore so effortlessly. No designer dress. No forced confidence. Just a woman carrying the weight of her own choices. She stopped a few feet away from his desk. "Thank you for seeing me." Daniel gestured toward the chair across from him. "Sit." She did, folding her hands tightly in her lap. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "I heard the company is doing well," she said quietly. "It is," Daniel replied. "The people deserve that." She nodded. "You always cared about people." "I cared about image." Silence returned. "I didn't come to ask for anything," she said quickly, as if afraid he might misunderstand. "I just needed to say something. Something I should have said years ago." Daniel waited. "I was wrong," Sophia said, her voice trembling.
"About you."
"About strength. About love. I thought power was loud, expensive, visible. I didn't see the kind you were building quietly. And when I realized it, it was already too late." Daniel leaned back slightly, studying her face. He saw regret there. Real regret. Not because she had lost status, but because she had lost something irreplaceable. "I humiliated you," she continued. "I made you feel small so I could feel safe. That's something I'll regret for the rest of my life." Daniel exhaled slowly. "I carried that pain for a long time," he said. "But I don't carry it anymore." She looked up sharply. "You forgive me?"
He thought for a moment.
"Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," he said. "It means choosing peace over resentment. And I chose peace a long time ago." Tears rolled down her cheeks now, unrestrained. "I lost everything, Daniel. And only now do I understand what you gained." Daniel stood and walked toward the window. The city stretched endlessly before them, busy, indifferent, alive. "I didn't gain wealth," he said softly. "I gained self-worth. That came first. Everything else followed." Sophia stood as well. Is there any place for me in your life now? Daniel turned to face her fully. His answer was gentle but final. There will always be a place for what we were, but not for what we could have been. She nodded, swallowing hard. I understand. As she walked toward the door, she paused. You really did survive without me. Daniel smiled faintly. I learned that survival isn't about who stays. It's about who you become when they leave. The door closed softly behind her. Daniel returned to his desk, not with heaviness, but with clarity. The chapter had ended the way it needed to, not with cruelty, not with revenge, but with truth. Years later, people would tell his story without knowing the whole of it. They would talk about the poor husband who became powerful, about the dramatic reversal, about the company he bought that once belonged to the woman who rejected him. But Daniel knew the real story. It wasn't about money. It was about a man who was told he was nothing and believed it until life forced him to prove himself wrong. It was about learning that humiliation can either destroy you or discipline you. That loneliness can either break you or build you. That success is most powerful when it arrives quietly, without bitterness, without cruelty. And above all, it was about this simple truth. Never underestimate the person who has lost everything, because they have nothing left to fear and everything left to become. If this story moved you, remember this. People may judge you by what you have today, but life will judge you by what you become tomorrow. Never let someone else's pride define your worth, and never measure your value by your lowest moment. Sometimes, being left with nothing is the beginning of becoming everything. Stay patient, stay disciplined, and let your success speak when words are no longer needed.